if you see what you saw in Sydney and you take what we're about to show you coming out of Flemington yesterday, where do you find this big bad enemy, the rival for Winx that we're sort of looking for? Because Grunt was really good in this race, but I'm not sure there's a horse in this race you would go, wow, that is a legitimate danger. So here is the Makybe Diva, and John Snow from the inside. He punches out as he tends to do and gets handy.
A little bit of trouble early that Bradwell Willer gets 12 days. This is the first bit of interference as he crosses over and causes a concertina effect back through the field.
He's on Blackout Bart?
He's on Blackout Bart in the yellow sleeves, and there's some trouble just going back through the field, coming through, gets a lot of trouble in the yellow colours near the back, and then again in the home straight, shifting out under pressure, a further suspension for Bradwell Willer. But they ran at a good tempo. Grunt running fifth was in a lovely spot and a great rhythm. Kingswell Dream, I thought, was a little disappointing. He seemed to track up really well in the race, and even Kementari, there's some suggestion he just didn't quite let down yesterday, but Grunt was terrific.
Well, they almost dropped Grunt yesterday, but Mick priced it, and he was sort of always saying that Flemington's the go, don't worry about the Caulfield runs. You know, in little lines that were in along the form line with Grunt the last few weeks, he's the second best horse in Australia, watch out for a big summer. And here we go, he kickstarted it.
Grunt the yellow cap, Kementari behind him in the white. Kingswell Dream was trotting in those forest green colours, and John Snow switches back to the inside. Blackout Bart shifting out under pressure, but the Trelawney stud, Progeny Grunt, out of a half-sister Ocean Park, bringing it home in the Makybe Diva.
But it's Grunt at the 150 from John Snow, Kingswell Dream. Grunt is clear. Grunt 2 lengths in front, laps up Flemington. Grunt won the Group 1. Kingswell Dream second. Third photo, John Snow.
So the spring showpiece is really putting on a show in that race, headed by Grunt, and I suppose with Murray Baker, co-trainer of John Snow, he would have had to have been happy with that run.
Yeah, terrific run, Jane. He's not really a miler, and second up, but he's very well at the moment, and should be right when he hits that 2,000.
Happy with the feedback that you got from Stephen Baster?
Yeah, no, we thought it was a terrific run. A very, very good field. You'd be lucky to get a Group 1 weight for age field like that again this season. They're all there, all the stars, so he fought on well, did well.
What are the plans out of today's race?
We'll probably look at the Underwood or... Yeah, probably the
So 26 now for John Snow after that perfect run you'd suggest for Caulfield Cup, Melbourne Cup aspirations, mate.
Yeah, and this market changed enormously during the week because Chris Waller, who we, as I said, are trying to get this morning, but his media obligations would be enormous, has suggested Unforgotten won't go there. So Unforgotten was sitting equal favourite for the Caulfield Cup, and they've decided to go to the Epsom at this stage, and that's why the question marks are next to her. Like Bruce, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you know she'll run 2-4, but Chris is obviously thinking closer to home. 1600, she can start a little bit fresher. It's the two things would seem quite vastly different races, so he's going to need to keep her legs a bit fresher, one would think, for the mile.
Maybe just not over-facing her as a 4-year-old. We know he's very conservative and gets great longevity out of his horses, so that might be a key there. Yeah,
look, I think it's a market which is going to have a lot of movement in it. And I think a lot of the Kiwis, because Murray and Andrew have a whole bunch of horses over there now. Vinda Dance had a jump out on Friday morning, and obviously Bonnevale's already there. I think most of the Kiwis would enjoy some rain, just a little bit, because it was very hard there yesterday. There's a bit of controversy about Michelle Payne got fined $300 for telling everybody the track was too hard. Here's the Melbourne Cup weights. They came out during the week, and John Snow's the top weighted of the New Zealanders, but of course that's because as a boy he gets more weight than Bonnevale, who's actually rated above him. And Bruce, we could end up with a decent bunch of horses in the race this year and far more representation than we've had in recent years.
Absolutely. We saw Alan Sharrock during the week not overly concerned with the 51 in order of ballot. There was always attrition through the spring. Surrey equal 24th, 124th out of Makybe Diva.
Interesting conversation during the week. Mick Kent suggesting in a blog that he thinks it should be capped how many overseas horses can come to the Melbourne Cup, because it's losing some lustre, because most people don't know half the horses in the race. What are your views on that?
Well, if you want a world-class World Cup type 2-mile race, how can you deny people running? But the problem they're getting into is that they're overrating some of these European horses so they don't sneak in under the handicappers' radar, but that's pushing them up the order, isn't it? And putting genuine Group 1 horses like Ladies First down in 51st position for a Melbourne Cup.
I think for a lot of people watching this show, look, when you see Who Shot the Barman in the Melbourne Cup, you go, oh, that's cool, I know him, he's a good old dude. And then sometimes you see horses and go, what's that? I've never heard of that. And you can't exclude them from it because of that. But I do think that maybe, and some of the fact that so many rich people win the Melbourne Cup now, maybe people have lost a bit of the fairy tale to it a little bit. Like if Lloyd Williams wins it again this year, people are going to go, well, really?
Here's the first page of favourites, and most of them are Europeans.
Yeah. Did you see Avelius yesterday at Renwick?
Oh, I love that horse.
Yeah,
he is the real deal.
He's a good horse. That's it. But
Yep.
look at that page there now. Without being rude, and I'm not trying to slag anybody, people watching the show know Kings Will Dream. They'll know Torsador because, of course, he was the Tiakau and Pencaro owned horse. Most of these other horses, people go, well, I've never heard of those. And that, I'm not saying it should be stopped, but it is something which makes it hard for many people to relate to the race.
Yep.
So Who Shot the Barman's as close to a Kiwi moment for Kiwis now as there is, and he's not likely to win it either, is he? And so, you know, when you say there have been ramifications with the Europeans arriving, does that mean the crowds are falling away and there's just not the interest?
No, the carnival's bigger than it's ever been. I just
So
think
it's
that
just corporatised.
the local trainers want to have a bite at the cherry because they're such a big cherry. And it's very easy to think, oh, well, you can't beat these horses, but little old Prince of Penzance, bred down at Rich Hill, beat them 2 or 3 years ago. So it's not impossible, but there's definitely a kickback, and that story cycles every now and then, and I doubt anything's going to happen about it. Yeah.
Still trying to get a hold of Chris Waller. We'll take in some more highlights from the Australian racing scene over the weekend and try and kick in with Chris Waller in the next 10 or so minutes. Obviously has some obligations with media in Australia. Is this the most expensive or filly in Australasia at the moment?
Frankel out of Samantha Miss by a champion out of a champion, and she was a different horse ridden off the speed. 11 of the last 20 T-Rose winners have gone on to win the Flight Stakes, and she'll be starting a short favourite in that off this. Avelius, the horse we spoke about, is Caulfield and Melbourne's Cup horse, right out wide in the Godolphin Blue, and he was super. Look at the way he quickens up. Patrick Erin is pretty good through the pack, working home for fourth. Tommy Berry, I thought, might have made an error leaving the fence early and giving the run to the second horse. That's the Kingston Town, won by the very
We've got to try and
impressive
cope with
Avelius.
that to win the Melbourne Cup, don't we?
Yeah, it's a super. And now completing the great weekend for Waikato Stud, the Mapley bred son of O'Reilly, fighting back strongly, Brutal to win the Antler Trophy. Great battle off the front, and he really stuck his head
Showed
out.
some top quality here to get back and win, eh?
Brutal fights from Leonardo to Hinchey. Brutal and Leonardo to Hinchey. Brutal has just won from Leonardo to Hinchey, good and fast.